everybody. Welcome back to the Boring Enterprise Nerdcast, where I, whose name is Paul Moderman, and my incredible partner in crime, Yelena Perfilgeva, we seek out and we talk to voices in the wilderness who legitimately change people's lives every single day. And today, that voice from the wilderness is the incomparable Geoff Scott, CEO, Chief Community something or other of ASUG, um, and just all around swell guy. So Geoff, what? First of all, welcome. Thanks for coming on. What's on your mind these days? What are you thinking about?
uh, at the very moment that amazing intro from you
Hmm.
and wondering if you actually planned that or you just were eloquent and articulate enough to say that. Because when you say seek out and change people's lives, I hope you infer for the better.
Yes.
Sometimes in my world, I hope that's the case, but sometimes find out it may not be. So both as the leader of ASUG and the leader of a large, wonderful group of people who are trying to bring all of us as a community together every day. So, uh, you know, um, sometimes you seek out and change people's lives. You don't intend it. Sometimes you do, and sometimes you get unintended consequences in the process. So, regardless of all of that, Paul and Helena, it's wonderful to be back with you. Seek and ye shall find, and for better or worse, you found me today.
So
So,
you like because we have a couple of like SAP-ish kind of topics we'd love to get to, but actually the meanderings of our intro here took me to one of the things I wanted to ask you maybe later
yeah,
on, but let's start with this.
don't hesitate.
And
Great
this is
opportunity.
the Phil, please go to the Acropolis and become the philosopher you're always meant to be here. My question for you, Geoff, is
Oh, wow.
what makes a strong community?
It's a great question. I think, first of all, what makes a strong community is a passionate group of people who are engaged and thinking about a future and a future outcome that they all rally around. When I think about the SAP community, I think about it. We also use this word ecosystem, which we internally debate about. It's not really a good word, but it's the coming together
Yeah.
of SAP, the customer base, and the partner community. Those three things.
Mm.
We actually, when we debated this, we wrote as ASUG, we wrote last summer, we wrote almost a 15-page vision statement about where we wanted to be in 7 years. And we had this searing internal debate about whether it's a three-legged or a four-legged stool. I can't tell you how much time we spent debating legs of a stool. And the idea being that the community is at the top of the legs. And that the problem with, like, if you say it's a three-legged stool, which means it's us as customers plus the partner ecosystem plus SAP.
Uh-huh.
Well, that doesn't work unless there's a fourth element, which is people, because it's the people element of this that makes it all work, right? And what I've said to SAP and what I've said to many other technology companies who come to us, because ASUG is seen through no fault of my own, as a bellwether, lighthouse of what great technology communities are.
Mm.
And I've said, look, at the end of the day, it's about an ecosystem that has to thrive, which means we as individuals have to come to this and say, hey, I can make a career out of this thing called SAP. I can find employment. I can put food on my table. I can pay for my rent in my house. I can maybe even pay for my kids' college education. I can retire, right?
Mm.
And if we can't offer that to people as part of this ecosystem, then they're not going to come. So what I think about is community is, and this is incredibly important. I think this is, and there's a couple of others out there. I think enterprise technologies is really, really different from a lot of others, right? And there's
Yeah.
lots of communities around, but we
Yeah.
have to foundationally create an environment where people go, I want to do this thing called SAP because
Mm.
if I do this, I can make my life better. And so first and foremost, we have another document we have internally about, what does being part of ASUG or part of a community mean? And the first one is a sense of belonging and a sense of camaraderie, right? That I
Mm.
feel like I belong here. And then the next one that comes on the list is connection and networking, right? But you don't get to networking unless you can check off the first one, which is I feel like I belong and I feel like I'm safe, which then ultimately translates to kind of this Maslow's hierarchy of needs. When you
Mhm.
think about Maslow, right, and what Maslow says about safety being the preeminent one, I think a lot of community is about safety, right? It's a
Mm.
scary world out there. If I do this thing, if I commit to this as my profession, am I going to be safe, right? And I've always sent as a CIO, I've always had this interesting tension in the SAP ecosystem around the notion that I work for this company, but I'm also an SAP person. I'm an SAP professional. So if it doesn't work out for me at this company, I can take that skill and I can move it down the road to someone else. I think that's part of community. Um,
Interesting.
and I think, we have to create a feeling of belonging and a feeling like we can work together to create a better future for us. Some people think about that in the sense of, well, I want to make a better product. Of course, we want to work with SAP, of course, but ultimately, I think it's about all of us coming together and making the world a better place. And I think a lot of what we do as enterprise technology is foundational to how this economy works, how our world works, and we're all an incredible part of that. I apologize. That was a very long-winded answer to your very simple question.
Yeah, we're gonna cut it down in post to like a
Yeah.
sentence and a half.
To me
Yeah,
going,
yeah, we're just gonna get all.
I don't know.
We're gonna tell our editor leave the uhs and take the rest out. Um, if you do, how do you measure ASUG's effectiveness in community creation, support, etc.?
I think it comes down to two things, and they're not actually all that exciting nor sexy. Uh, Engagement. Are people showing up at the various different events? Are they consuming,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And are they returning? So when we do, you brought up earlier ASUG Tech Connect. It
Yeah,
was a fantastic event last year in New Orleans, and it'll be in the Palm Beach, Florida, November 11th through the 14th. Um,
get your tickets now.
get your
Yeah.
tickets now.
Book your flights.
Sweet,
Did we
sweet promo. Yeah.
capture? Yeah, did we capture lightning in a bottle in New Orleans in 2023, or are we actually able to
Yes.
take that and return, have enough people return where that lightning gets replicated? And to me, that's one of the things I look at. So the ability for us to not have someone come in, you don't create community by someone coming in and saying, "Okay, got it, I'm here, I'm never returning." That's not a community. A community is when you engage and you go, you know what, I want to come back because that delivered value. Me spending time at that event or at a chapter meeting or reading this saved me time in my job. It allowed me to go home a little sooner and spend time with my family. It made sure that I didn't get that invariable email, at 9 o'clock at night that says, I don't understand why this isn't working. I'm not sweating every time we run, a program. I can actually configure something the way I'm supposed to do it. So are we saving time? Are we creating opportunity for people to get to the next level of their careers and their skill sets? That to me is what this is all about. And so
Do
are we
you?
doing a good job of that?
So you probably heard me interject there and say yes, emphatically when you asked if you
Yeah.
caught lightning in a bottle, and that's good. And so let's put a pin in that because I want to come back to Tech Connect in a broader sense. The question, Yelena, you and I talk about the the youth factor, the kids these days, but in a good way, right? Because we talk about how
These youths.
these youths get
Youths.
off my lawn. Um, we talk about how it feel like some corners, especially kind of the nerd tech corners in the SAP realm, feel like the youths aren't coming the way they used to these things. Is that indicative of something, or is that just our nerd perspective?
I think there's a truth. It's a great question, Paul. There's some truth to what you said. I belong to another group of CEOs, and we get together every month. And yesterday we were together, about 12 of us.
Hmm.
Um, and I love the model that this other association has. And we get together. It's the same 12. We've been together for 7 years. So I not only do I know these individuals professionally because they all run different businesses, but I also know them personally because over these 7 years, we've got to understand. And part of what we do is not just talk about what's going on inside of our businesses, what's going on inside of our lives, right?
Right, right.
So who's getting married, who's getting divorced, whose kids are doing what, right? And that
Yeah,
creates that
yeah.
back to community. That creates that sense of bond. yesterday, and we frequently have a guest speaker,
Mhm.
and our guest speaker yesterday was talking to us about the differences between the generations, the boomers, the millennials, the Gen Xers, the Gen Zers, right? And
Mhm.
how they approach things differently. And it opened up my eyes yesterday about some things that we need to think differently about. And funnily enough, the day before, uh, the ASUG team had its quarterly business review. We as ASUG also do quarterly business reviews. Oh,
Mhm.
they're exciting. And we're talking about, and the leadership team is together for a day, full day. And we were talking about what segments of the market do we need to do a better job connecting with. And new professionals, right, coming into the workforce from college was a target area that we talked about. The light bulb that went off in my head was we cannot talk to them. If you think about ASUG today, it sort of is a Gen X millennial audience.
Mhm.
And we talk to
Mhm.
that group as if they're Gen Xers and millennials,
Yeah.
right? Email, right?
Yeah.
PDFs,
Yeah.
right? The Gen Zers of the world think about stuff in terms of emojis. It's funny enough, we had this conversation before we jumped on the call today with you guys. Emojis, TikToks, short term videos, right? Short form videos. They consume information very differently. They're the first generation that grew up in a fully digital age. The three of us on this phone call, this Teams meet link today, and this podcast did not. We adapted to the technology. We did not
Right.
grow up with an iPhone or an Android in our hands. That group did, which means I think if we want to engage that group, we have to meet them on their field, not assume that they will
Walk
conform
to
to
our
ours,
field. Yeah.
right? So this idea that they are going to read, I mean, my daughter is 22, my son is 24. They don't do email, right? I mean, to them, email's oh, you sent me an email,
You might as well have sent a papyrus,
right?
right?
I
Yeah.
mean, they'll read it, but it's not where they go,
Carrier
right?
pigeon.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think to your point, the foundational challenge of what we're doing today is that those individuals are going to need to be communicated with very differently. And I don't know we as ASUG have sat down and thought about that long enough to figure out what that is. I do believe they like community, but they consume it differently. To them, community could be a completely digital world. It's sending snaps to each other. It's very different, right?
I'm
Um,
gonna I'm gonna I can jump in. I have a piece of advice from my daughter right now
how old's your
that
daughter?
Yelena I think would apply especially to us. Is that because we in our newsletter we do a lot of the like the meme picture with the block
Yeah,
white
Mm.
letters. My daughter is like, Dad, those are so millennial. Stop doing memes like that. She thinks they are
but
so old. Yeah.
but to the audience that you're largely trying to reach, it works. I
That's
think,
like they're like,
you
yeah, yeah.
listen, you guys are doing an amazing job with your newsletters reaching millennials. ASUG is doing a great job reaching Gen Xers, right? I mean, we do not, I mean, we look very buttoned up and, very
Mm.
narrow. We're not doing memes very often. We probably should. Um, Here's the other piece that I think, by Paul, you're spot on. But the problem is that if you start doing that, how do you not disenfranchise the other audiences? So if you start, doing what your daughter suggests, do you now appeal to the Gen Zers and the millennials and the Gen Xers like, what is this?
What is that?
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, this is very uncomfortable. I'm not engaging. We have these conversations about engaging new talent out of colleges and universities. And the other foundational challenge is that SAP is not an entry level skill, right? In order to
100%.
do, and this is one of the other things that's been turning around in my head, and I don't know how to solve for it, but you're unlikely to graduate college or university and just jump into an SAP career and start like, hey, welcome to your first day at XYZ Corporation. We understand that you have some SAP background. You learned it at college and university. We really want to rethink our GL, and so we're wondering if you want to kick off a project of just kind of rethinking our GL and adapting the new GL standards. Have at it. Have a good time. Let us know what you come up with, and please, by all means, put that into production over the weekend.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's just not. I mean,
just not gonna happen.
Even folks like us who have been around for 20 years, 30 years are still like, you want to implement a what? And that's going to take 6 months to a year of really careful thought and a whole lot of change management and very careful coordination, or we are going to break a lot of things that are very important to you.
Yeah.
And I think that that's also a differentiator here. I came out of a college university with a degree in accounting. I'm a riveting accountant. And at the time, when I was
sorry, you just put me to sleep there for a brief. Sorry about that, Geoff. I just woke up. Sorry.
When I graduated 100 million years ago, right? For us, the dinosaurs and I came out with my abacus and debits and credits and T accounts. I actually walked into one of our conference rooms the other day, last Thursday, and our accounting team actually had T accounts up on the whiteboard. And I was like, yes,
yay!
I'm back. And so, when I was graduating, and we had the accounting fraternity, or, academic fraternity, you made a big decision. Were you going to go to work for consulting firms, or were you going to go to work for industry? At the time, we called it industry. Go to work for a company. I think in the SAP space, we have found that exact same conundrum. It's taken
100%.
15 years, but we're there, right? When these kids now graduate, these youngsters, youngins graduate from university, they probably, the Gen Zers are probably very offended I said that. Do they go to work for one of the big SIs?
The great thing is many of them probably aren't listening right now, so you're probably okay.
We should start throwing memes out there real time.
We should put it on TikTok, then we finally
if
can
the three of us on the three of us should do very awkward TikToks.
What's how do you do, fellow kids?
So when they go out and do and get these jobs, one of the primal fears I have from the ASUG perspective is, as customers of SAP, we have to figure out how to bring these individuals into these organizations. At the same time, the headcount constraints on most SAP customers are as tight as they've ever been, right? Yeah. So in essence, we're actually taking a lot of these graduates and pushing them into consulting because the open headcount to do this just isn't there.
That's right. That's 100% true.
Geoff,
so that's a lot of different variables kind of coming together all at the same time, just based off of your simple question, Paul. Hey, what's community?
We're just going where the breeze takes us, guys. Let's go.
So I have a question with short backstory. I stayed at a Radisson hotel recently, and I don't really stay at that chain for some reason frequently. So I did have some kind of account with them, which very nice lady that was checking me and helped me to discover, even though I didn't book through them. And as she was doing that, she was like, "Oh, did you know that you can also get like 10% discount at the restaurants that are in the hotel, even though if you're not staying at the hotel?" And I was like, well, it's not like I'm planning really on doing that, but it was interesting that it's advantage that existed I had no idea about. So I'm curious for ASUG, what would be the equivalent of that? What do you think are maybe some advantages or some perks or some opportunities at ASUG that ASUG members, either companies or maybe individuals, are not really taken advantage of, maybe not even knowing? What's your like 10% restaurant discount equivalent?
I think first and foremost, it's not quite a 10%, but we offer 39 or up to 39 chapters across North America. And for most of us, if you're not in some of the outer reaches of Idaho or Nebraska, there should be a chapter somewhere fairly close to you that does not require you to spend a hotel night or drive 10 hours or get on an airplane to engage with your local community. And we are seeing tremendous amount of interest in our local chapters. And the idea that you can get together, back to community, back to where you started, Paul, get together with people who kind of share a similar background as you and talk about SAP and share stories and connect and network with each other to me is one of the best advantages of why ASUG is so successful doing what it's doing, because you can do that and you can take a day away from your office and just receive so much value in that we know we are in days where training budgets are frequently the first thing to get cut when companies look to kind of pull expenses in. This is something you can do that is a tremendous offer. So I don't think it's 10%, Helena, because from a membership perspective, while the company is a member of ASUG, and if you're a member of ASUG, you can attend as many chapter meetings as you want. It's a 100% discount to you. All you have to give is your time.
Yeah.
And you may even get a free meal out of it. Give you a wonderful bag lunch with a stale cookie. Slightly better than that.
Raleigh chapter always has the best meals, I can tell you that. So if you happen to be in North Carolina, you always have best meals. Minnesota was good too.
I think what always impresses me is that just the look of joy on people's faces when they see each other when they come together in these events, right? That look of, oh my God, you're here. I've missed you. And what's going on in your world? And when you show up at an ASUG chapter meeting, same thing when I talked about my other association I'm part of. What's going on in your family? What's going on in your career? It's not just about, hey, how did you make that configuration in FICO the other day? And how do you, I mean, it's much deeper than that. And I think that creates the glue. Back to what I said is, Paul, you said, what do we measure? Are you engaged and will you come back? And that to me is what the coming back means, right? And to me, then that is the ecosystem. I think about ASUG is, and I've said this to SAP directly, my job as ASUG is to make sure that your ecosystem is as strong 30 years from now as it is today. Because every single SAP customer has made a long-term bet and a commitment that this software will last a long time. If you and I said, hey, we're going to buy this SAP thing, I don't know if it's going to be here in a couple of years. Oh, that's okay. No big deal. We'll spend all these billions of dollars. If we got to do it again, no big deal. We'll do it again, right? No, I said to SAP, they invited me and I attended their 50th anniversary in Germany. And I said, look, my job is to celebrate this with you and to make sure as a representative of the customer community that we're here. I won't be, but this happens at year 100. And that to me is why this community around SAP is so important, because so many of our companies that are operating have made a massive commitment to the software. It is running the fabric of their enterprise. Yeah, it may not be the most exciting thing in the world, but watch excitement when you can't bill, when the general ledger can't get closed, when you can't communicate with Wall Street about your financial performance, you can't ship product, you can't take a sales order. It's like no one talks about electricity until it all goes off in your house, and then everything goes bananas. Right?
And all the utilities run SAP. So there you go.
And there's the utilities event. Our utilities customers come together. We do an event with them and in collaboration with SAP every year.
Tickets available now.
Tickets available now. And it's actually one of the coolest events because they're all public utilities, and they just share everything. They don't feel this competitive. I can't tell you how we do that because that's a competitive advantage. Is how you do accounts receivable a competitive advantage? I hope not. But it's a wonderful group of people to get together.
So,
you went in a lot of directions I was not expecting today, Paul. Hopefully your audience is enamored with these questions as I am.
Yeah, we'll get the analytics out of it and we'll see if they are.
No.
And then we'll make our TikTok cuts based on those analytics. So
we may have to do TikTok.
Yeah.
That's our clue to talk about AI, Paul.
Yeah, well, we'll get there. I wanted because you touched on engaging and coming back. With the theme of coming back, let's jump to Tech Connect 2024.
Yeah.
What's gonna be different this time around?
I think what we engaged with in 23 in New Orleans, I don't want to I don't think we go on a 90-degree turn. Right. I think it's a lot of the same, right? What worked? One we got a chance as ASUG and the volunteer community and everyone who influenced. What are the topics that are most important to us as a community? We're doing that again. How do we want to think about some of these technologies? We will do more in Tech Connect 24 around AI, right? What does this really mean? How do we actually use it? BTP is still an amazing part of the ecosystem. So we'll do BTP as well. We are hopeful that the development organization inside of SAP that does the application development also comes together and comes and talks about what they're thinking about from a development perspective. So I think you're going to see us do a lot of that. What we could do, if you guys would like, is have a completely different podcast with the team here at ASUG that's putting this together, and thinking about, how do we do this right level of content. We can do a whole preview with you both, and you both are tremendous in last year's event. So I hope you're coming back.
Oh yeah, wouldn't miss it.
More and more customer stories. I think we can use Sapphire and ASUG Annual Conference as a setup of strategies and things to come. And what Tech Connect is about is how do I actually make this happen, and how do I wrap up 24 and make sure that I start 2025 off hitting the ground running, and ready to go. And when you have an event in May, right, where Sapphire and ASUG Annual Conference typically is, it's kind of mid-year. I think of this as a great opportunity to set the stage for the year that comes.
When you talk about stories, I think that's one of the key things, out of things like Sapphire and stuff like that, obviously. But and I hope nobody at SAP picks up the phone and yells at me. But like one of my favorite things about attending things like TechEd or Tech Connect or whatever, pick your thing, is when some lady from some boring corporation you hardly ever think about gets up in front of people and tells, here's what we do where we are, and here's our goofy ass problem that we solved. And it's not quite the same as the SAP like mess of a slide deck that is full of like a roadmap that like changes every 10 minutes and whatever like that. But it's like, this is what we actually did, and I have the like battle scars and bags under my eyes to prove that we did this.
That is what the community is asking for over and over and over again. And it just requires some courage. And I think in Tech Connect, we have it, that you can actually feel comfortable and you can feel safe to share those stories, good and bad. Right. So I believe that our target this year is to quadruple, 4x the customer stories that we had in New Orleans.
Okay.
I think that is a wonderful goal. I'm not sure we will get there, but it's going to require us and to get the customers to come to the table. And it's interesting. If we do it as ASUG centric, we are fairly successful. When it gets coupled with a partner, when it gets coupled with SAP, it gets a little bit more complicated because, okay, what are you going to say? And are you doing an endorsement? An endorsement's different, right? An endorsement sounds different, right? And and many organizations in today's day and age are nervous about making those types of broad statements. So what we say to most people is, we want you to talk not on behalf of your company, because you're not an official spokesperson. What did you take away? What did you learn? So as Paul, what have you learned in your profession? And I think those are very powerful stories.
Yelena, you and I have talked about this a number of times, in that like those are our favorite things, is hearing people talk about what they did.
Yeah.
Like I would like, is there a way, I'm just tossing this out to like the universe, but I guess this is us on the call right now who's listening to the universe or from the universe side. Like, Yelena, is there a way for somehow for you and I to help encourage people to do this? Like, what can we, and the question, maybe obviously this question is for you too, Geoff, like what can the two of us super boring nerds do to help encourage people who are like us, who don't work for SAP, to tell stories about the real crap we encounter and deal with when we do stuff in the world.
I think storytelling, they say what's central to the human psyche and the human spirit is this notion of storytelling. That
Yeah.
we as a species thrive on stories. It's how we remember, it's how we learn. You know, that idea of sitting around a campfire and hearing those things. Storytelling is a wonderful thing for everyone to get much better at. So I think what ASUG offers is tell your story.
Yeah.
Talk about you, make it authentic, and you know, we will provide a supportive space for you to do that, and we would be excited to help you do that. It's like it's sort of like TED Talks, but not. I mean, TED does an awful lot of work to hyper produce what you say. We don't want to be that. We don't want to be that scripted. We want you to just say, "I went and did a S4 implementation, and here are the 4 things that I learned." Not a,
Yeah.
hey, I went and did an S4 implementation at Acme Welding, and here's what Acme Welding learned. No, Acme Welding didn't learn anything. What did you learn?
Yeah.
Right. And I think that takes some of the corporate piece out of it. And by the way, that resonates so deeply with the rest of the, back to what you asked me at the beginning of the podcast, Paul, community.
Yeah.
Help us. Who, you know, I grew up listening to my parents loved comedy, and there's they're Dudley Moore and Peter Cook are 2 Brits. They're both, I think, long deceased. They did this comedy skit together, and one of the sentences goes, they did this skit where one person was interviewing another, and he says, "Well, have you learned from your mistakes?" And the guy kind of goes, and he kind of goes, "Yes, yes. I have absolutely learned from my mistakes, and I am sure I can repeat them exactly." Right. And you know, that to me is comedy. And it says that when we learn these things, then the next time we go to do them, we'll go, "Oh, well, I remember Paul said this, and I'm not going to do that because that's the path he went down." We tend to think of these stories as negative, and I don't want them to be, right? You know, here's the 5 things you should know so that your SAP implementation doesn't explode into a million pieces and melt down in front of your face. I mean, that's a lot of drama. I would change that and say, here are the 5 things you need to know to take your SAP implementations to the next level. That, you know, that has a different approach to it, and we all have those stories.
And I frequently hear that from others that, oh, you know, I would love to present maybe and talk about it, but I don't have any exciting subject. I really don't have anything to
We
say.
all
And I
do.
think every single person has something to say about something for sure. It's just a matter
100%.
of picking that and just telling your story. It may not be AI, BTP, something super novel or exciting, but everyone has those stories, everyone has lessons, and just the only mistake you can make is not going out and not telling yours, I think.
I think you just shined a light on like the secret shortcut to this stuff, Yelena, which is everyone's favorite subject is themselves,
Yeah.
right? So why don't you just open your heart and talk about
Yeah.
yourself and
Yeah.
what you did in your goofy, messed up thing that you failed at and can share lessons for, or
Yeah.
that you like thump your chest and say, "Yep, I crushed it." Like you like people like when you filter it through the lens of your like feelings, your heart. Like you should the facts should like go through the filter of your heart, I think.
It's authentically you,
Yeah.
and no one can take that away from you. As a point of reference, I listen to the New York Times daily,
Yeah.
hopefully every day. Sometimes I get busy and I don't. And it's amazing about that particular podcast is there's some, and every day it's another half hour of something. And some days I'm like, I have zero interest in that subject, but I'm walking my dog in the morning. It's 6 o'clock in the morning, and I don't feel like pulling my phone out and changing to something else. So I just start listening. I'm like, I have no interest in this whatsoever. By the time I'm done, I'm like, you know what? That was actually a really cool thing. And
Mhm.
you know, sometimes I go into some of the sessions that we have, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to get out of this, and I find that I'm amazed,
Yeah.
right? And the ones that we try too hard at don't work.
Yeah.
And the ones
Mm.
that are just authentic and just, hey, I'm going to get up here and talk about this. It's not a bunch of slick slides. I'm not going to tell you a bunch of stuff that you don't believe. I'm just going to talk from my heart. The impact of those is amazing.
Priceless.
Yeah.
Priceless. Hmm.
Wow.
So
Now let's get on to world peace.
yeah, guys, I'm kind of floating on cloud nine right now.
Uh-oh.
Let's just tell stories about cool things.
Yeah.
That's it's a shortcut that I sometimes use in technical interviews. Is I
Uh-oh.
ask
Here
people
comes the zinger.
I ask people like, what's the coolest thing you ever did? And then what's the worst thing you ever did professionally? What's the biggest mistake you ever made? And like the reason I ask that is I just want people to talk through the lens of their heart on that stuff, right? Because
Yeah.
that will show you truth that cannot be captured in acronym bullet points of 4 years of Java and 6 years of who even freaking cares?
Yeah.
Like, and by the way, this is my soapbox for that kind of stuff is legitimately tech recruiters. Who even cares about 4 years of Java or 6 years of it's just
Right.
that it doesn't matter.
No, I mean
Yeah.
it's a tool. Like it's like getting
Yeah,
excited about a
yeah,
wrench.
yeah,
Hey, this is
exactly.
an amazing wrench. Well, it's
Oof.
only an amazing wrench if it actually works and turns the bolt you're trying to screw to something. If it
Yeah,
doesn't, it's just a wrench.
it's just a poorly shaped hammer at that point, right?
It's a poorly shaped hammer.
Can it be used as a
Oh,
hammer?
So we had a bullet in our discussion points too because we started to engage on this discussion like a month or two ago, and then just vacations and trips and all that kind of stuff happened in our lives,
life.
and then whatever that happens. The, I wanted to reach back in time a little bit to Sapphire because Jeff,
Oh,
you
that
were
that feels like
physically.
100
Doesn't it feel
years
like
ago.
100 years ago?
Oh yeah.
So the question I have, Jeff, is since then, have the things that people discussed at Sapphire felt like they were like actualizing into reality? Like, do you feel like what Christian Klein or Jurgen Miller or whoever or what's her, I'm sorry, I forgot her name, the marketing person.
Julia
Uh,
White, the head of
yeah,
marketing.
Julia
Yes.
White, Julia
Mhm.
White, yeah, Julia. Um, like, do you feel like the topics and the conversations that those guys started there are starting to take shape in the world, or is it too early to tell on that?
I think that one of the interesting things about this year's Sapphire and ASUG annual conference is it felt like a pre-pandemic Sapphire
Mm,
and ASUG annual
Mm.
conference. I
mm,
felt like the customer energy was back.
mm.
There was a lot of interest. One of the things I still think that's the best thing about Sapphire and ASUG annual conference, same thing for a chapter meeting, is everyone sees each other, right? They run into each other.
Yeah.
There's no better place than Sapphire and ASIC annual conference to meet up with your peers, meet up with SAP and the partner community simultaneously. It's like a big, meet up, and I think that was good. So there's just a tremendous amount of energy. And by the way, some people at Sapphire and ASIC annual conference have as good a time just walking the floor and running into people that they know than running from 30-minute meeting to 30-minute meeting to 30-minute meeting, which some of us do as well. What I
There,
thought was Go
yeah.
ahead.
All I was going to give you was a bolstering to that point is that I've been to a few Sapphires in my years, Sapphire and ASIC annual conference in my years. Um, And there have been days where I marked down the sessions I wanted to go to, and then I went to none of them because I was running into people and talking and getting distracted and that was like the perfect use of that time, right? It actually wound up, not that I'm knocking the sessions, I'm sure they're great too, but it was the perfect use of that time in in that universe, right? As a big warm fuzzy Orlando hug from
In
all your old
June,
friends in June.
in
Very,
Yeah,
very
June,
a
warm.
where
big
it's
a
warm
big
and fuzzy outside
sweaty,
and super
swampy
humid.
hug from your friends in Orlando. uh, yeah,
Interesting thing about it. We did not seem to belabor the everyone must go to S4 point.
Mm.
Got it. right?
Yeah.
We can talk about some other really important things. I think there was a lot more in this one about what does all this generative AI and AI mean,
Yeah.
right? That to me
Yeah.
was interesting, right?
Mm.
We and by the way, as I've said to both of you and in other places, right? If you really want to take advantage of generative AI to its fullest potential capability, it really requires a lot of things. One, that you believe that you can be successful in a cloud environment.
Yep.
It requires that you figure out how to decustomize as much as you can, right? Accept out of the box functionality. And third, that you're willing to move the responsibility for code management back to the vendor who wrote the code to begin with, meaning SAP, right? If you do those three things and you do them well, and by the way, that is not an easy undertaking for most SAP customers. What I just
Mm.
described in 30 seconds, most of them would heads explode, right?
Yeah.
Sets you up to be able to take advantage of AI as quickly as possible. Doesn't mean it may not arrive on your doorstep later, but you might be waiting a long time for that to show up. If you're highly customized, you don't want to be in the cloud, any AI tool you think about, you're going to have to do yourself. I had a conversation last week with a very large SAP customer, and they got it. Their light bulbs off. They said, "Yeah, we definitely are interested in AI, but we still, even after we've moved to S4, have so many customizations. Our list of custom objects is so long that we recognize that in the short term, this may be outside of our reach. Because in order to take advantage of that, we would have to undo so many things that
Mm.
we've just gotten very used to over time. So I think that to me is I mean, everything that SAP showed was very interesting, and there could be some humor in some of it, and it makes sense. The humor I had, Paul, because you're laughing, is I sat through Mohammed Alam's and Jurgen Mueller's keynote on day 2,
Mhm.
and I just kind of had this as I was walking out, and they showed all these different AI use cases in Joule, and I said, after you put your what you think is a quippy prompt into Joule, Joule comes back and says, it's clear that you do not know how to do your job, and I am not going to spend any more time with you teaching you what I already can do. So I have taken the liberty of terminating you in success factors. I have notified security that you're no
That's
longer
right.
employed here.
That's right.
I got this. I'll take it from here. See ya. And that was my funny thought of it. I'm sure other people are now horrified. Oh my God, he just talked about the AI taking over the world and ending all our careers.
You
No.
gave away the evil plans,
Yes.
Geoff.
I gave away my plans, my evil plans. So I just, but I think there's some reality to all of that. That how do you really how do you really take advantage of this? And that to me was a very interesting part of the conversation. And by the way, I don't think that that's easy. I don't think that happens in a year, but it's a journey we all need to go on as customers, because this is where I think this is just this is the classic Wayne Gretzky line: skate to where the puck is going,
Mm.
not
Yeah.
where it's been. And that's
Yeah.
this is where it's going. And it's not just an SAP thing. It is not just an SAP thing.
No
It is
way.
happening with
Yeah.
everybody, right?
The
And
that not SAP angle on it actually that wraps around to some of these conversations about your custom objects and your out of scope this and that and whatever, is that I have seen pretty good success in starting the process of getting your hands around and reducing your custom stuff using tools, not the SAP AI tools, but the other Gen AI tools out there, Azure Wrapped OpenAI or Google Gemini or Claude and things like that, is that there are
Blade.
opportunities out there and paths to, like, generative AI is not only like you put on your big boy pants and you go exactly where the vendor told you. Generative AI is also you applying your creativity to your existing environment, whatever it might be, to move yourself along that path more quickly. right?
Yeah.
You can produce. I know this for certain with all of my heart, both in that I've seen it and that I know it to be true, is that there are companies out there with decades old code, and the binders that have the documentation are lost to the sands of time.
Yeah.
100% that's true.
Yeah.
What better tool to recreate that documentation than generative AI? What better tool to help you refactor into new ABAP wrap and that kind of stuff than generative AI? What better tool to help your user community inside your company understand their solution than ingesting your solution details, including those documents, into RAG-enabled generative AI stuff that teaches you and shows you what you actually have and the paths forward. Like because I perfectly understand your point, Geoff, about the like the clean core and cloud being the optimal ideal place for, like, yes, this is the best shiny badge stuff for the future looking Gen AI stuff. The stuff that's out there now can help you get there too, is the point that I'm making.
I
we have
100%.
just 2 minutes.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. God, I
2
just
minutes.
jabbered on. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry.
No, Paul. I mean, what I would say, and I agree with you, is how many times have we looked at a block of code and said, I don't know what this block of code is doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by the way, I wrote it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that when I wrote it,
100%.
I wrote it 4 months ago.
Mhm.
I think I knew what I was doing. But now that I'm looking at this, I was where was I? What in goodness gracious was I trying to achieve? If AI can help describe that code and say, let me break this down for you in English of what I think you were trying to do here, and that is helpful, I think that's a breakthrough, right? If it could say,
Yep.
hey, here's what it looks like this was trying to do. Because I know many times I've read some of my code and I'm like, oh, wow.
What was
First
I
of all,
thinking?
was I ill-informed to begin? Was this
Yeah.
right? Or
What-
did I start off ill-informed when I wrote this? What exactly was going on? Back to your point. And I didn't document. And everyone says, oh, well, I take very good. I comment all my code. Really? I mean, I read my comments in code and I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't know what I was saying.
What was I
This
doing?
sentence doesn't even.
Yeah.
This sentence isn't even in English.
No. No. Okay, guys. Well, I think, you know what? This is a good place to put the brakes on, though, is because let's not let this peter out. Let's use momentum from this discussion to leap into our next one next time with even more stuff. Because I know we have short time frames. We all have meetings we got to go to. That's great. I want to say thank you, Geoff, for coming on and jabbering
Anytime.
with us about
Love it.
all these various things, and we will talk even more about this stuff in the future. Yelena, thank you, of course, for
Thank you, Elena. Great to
for
see you.
suffering me jabbering
Thank
about
you.
generative AI too.
You guys
I
are
saw
not
that
boring
coming.
enterprise nerds. You're very engaging and fun enterprise people.
Oh,
People.
thank you.
Yes.
People. We should rebrand. Damn it.
Yeah.
Paul.
Oh, we rebrand right now.
Damn it.
Exciting enterprise people.
Yeah.
Doesn't quite say the same thing. Great to see you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks, Geoff. Take
Thank
care.
you so much, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.